For those who might not know, in the last couple of years I've become kind of a masochist when it comes to gaming. I am mainly a gacha gamer, but I also play a lot of hard games, or at least what people would consider hard games, and that includes stuff like Elden Ring, original Dark Souls, trying to get through Jump King, all this other stuff, because I literally cannot stand myself. But that does not mean that I can't have a little bit of fun, and when new games come out, even though they might be considered a challenging game, I do like to pick them up every once in a while, and that is why I picked up recently Lords of the Fallen. Now, is this a Souls game that I think you guys will like? Well, I'm going to go ahead and give you a few little points about it, and then we're going to go ahead and give it a final rating to let you know if it is worth picking up. But of course, if you don't already know me, my name is TystraDaisetsu. I am here with Direct Gaming, and today we're going to be talking about Lords of the Fallen. Is it good? Is it bad? Or is it something you should skip? Now, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe down below, and hit that notification bell to be notified of when the next Direct Gaming video comes out. But without any further delay, let's go ahead and get into today's video. Now, of course, I've only spent around 10 hours in the game, and to be honest, I know that doesn't give it a lot of justice, but of course, this is just first impressions and how I feel about the game at the start. So let's go ahead and jump into the story first. So far in the story, I haven't been really able to follow because I did not play the previous installment of Lords of the Fallen. However, I do have a synopsis here that explains it very, very perfectly, and it goes as follows. Lords of the Fallen picks up a millennia after the defeat of the demon god Adir. However, gods do not fall forever. Adir is primed and ready to make a fierce comeback, and it's your job as a Dark Crusader to journey through both realms of the living and dead to finally vanquish him. Now, of course, that's a very brief explanation of what the game story actually is, but that's really what it boils down to. If you really look at it, most Souls-like games, their story is based in the lore that happens before the game and after the events that occur, and that's, you know, one of the reasons why I didn't really get so mad about it. However, I will say that I didn't really follow along in the couple bosses and the story and the, you know, lore in general in the background of the game. I've mainly just been playing it to kind of really take on the challenge, which seems probably a very skewed way to look at it, but at the same time, it's how I truly feel about Souls-like games. I like to study the lore a little bit after I've beaten the game if I truly like it. Now, of course, the story is not hard to follow. Like, again, it's a Souls game. You're going through, you're beating the bosses, you're taking down as many enemies as you can, you're taking down the big baddie, and of course, becoming, you know, either the big Lord God person, whatever you want to call it. Maybe again, it might be a skewed view of the game. However, I do have a lot of fun, at least listening to the characters' dialogues and learning a little bit about the story over time. Now, for me personally, I'm not saying that the story is bad at all. I want to be absolutely clear about that. However, again, it's going to take me a little bit of time to truly understand because I am behind by one game. Now, the one thing I'd like to talk about, obviously, is the gameplay, because really the gameplay is going to sell you on most games. And let me tell you, it plays exactly like every other Souls game, with a few minor changes. Of course, you have your standardized buttons where you're rolling, you're running, you're jumping, you're hitting, you're heavy hitting, and all that good stuff. There's really nothing else to it. However, they did add what's called the Umbral Lamp, and what this does is it takes you between the worlds of living and dead. This one taking you to the world of the dead, or realm of the dead, however you want to say it. With the realm of the dead, that's basically your second life. You can die once and then become part of the Umbral realm, and then once you get to an actual, you know, save spot, you could actually revive from there. However, you can also choose to sacrifice yourself to go into the Umbral realm. If you decide that you don't want to go to the Umbral realm and you know that you're going to need some sort of Umbral transportation, I guess is the best way to put it, you can actually use the Umbral Lamp without going into the Umbral state. Now, of course, I've also been mainly playing this game in multiplayer because what game is a game without a little bit of fun with your friends? And I also had my buddy, or someone from 5ix9ine as well, named Archice, who is also my editor on my own personal channel, to play along with as we went through the story. And honestly, it was a lot of fun. However, there were some things day one that really struck me as odd. From day one, co-op was actually very buggy. It was getting to where we only had, at most sometimes, 23 frames per second. And that's on the PC version, or Steam version for that matter. And it was very challenging because it felt like a lot of my inputs just weren't that good, because I felt like I was just getting my butt kicked the entire time. However, we did find out that we did have a day one patch shortly after I started playing the game which was dope. And it did fix the multiplayer issue a little bit. My frames went from 23 all the way up to 45 in multiplayer. Now, of course, when I did play single player for a little bit, my frames would go up to 140, 150, which is really, really good. However, multiplayer was what I wanted to play with because I really wanted to play around in the game and not have to worry too much about consistently dying, because I really wanted to give the experience, you know, its full attention. However, I know that some people will be like, if you're gonna play Dark Souls or a Souls-like game, you gotta play it by yourself, which is the plan. I do plan on doing it by myself. However, I did want to also experience a majority of the game without spending 10 hours sitting at the same boss over and over and over and over and over again. So my apologies. I promise I will go through the game by itself, or by myself, however you want to say it. Now, as you can see here in day one as well, I got stuck on a rock. Yeah, a rock. Like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was just like, nah, fam, you ain't going nowhere. But outside of that, the multiplayer was okay. Again, with the lagginess a little bit and day one patch, I could deal with it. Day two, however, it did actually fix everything, and, you know, with another patch, we were able to actually play it without having to worry about the frame rate, which was dope. I got up to 57, up to 60 actually, but 60 wouldn't be for too long. But I will say that the co-op, multiplayer, however you want to call it, was still pretty fun in general alongside my buddy Ark, so there's a plus. Now, just a couple quick notes, obviously. Of course, we know that, you know, Dark Souls has souls as your level up thing, and Elden Ring has... What was it? I'm so dumb. What was Elden Ring's stupid stuff called? Like how Dark Souls has souls and Elden Ring has runes, Lords of the Fallen has what's called Vigor. And yes, Vigor is going to be what you need to level up your characters. Not only that, but to get to where you could actually level up your weapons, you have to get to a certain part in the game where you actually have to unlock this old lady out of a cage, and it's locked behind this whole thing with a bunch of enemies that really just annoyed me. I'll tell you that right now. It was probably the most difficult part of the game, and it wasn't even like 5 hours in. So that's what hurt the most. Just a quick note also about the multiplayer is that both you and your partner in the game get the items. So there is a benefit to actually playing multiplayer with your friends. So that's a plus. A for team. Yeah, don't worry about how I said that. Let's just move on. Overall, I like the game in general in regards to the gameplay. It's definitely, again, another Souls game, so it makes a lot of sense with a few minor tweaks to it, so it's really, really dope. And the customization is actually not that bad at the start of the game. I didn't mind it. I didn't go through it too much, but I do know that there's a solid amount of options on there to make the character your own, especially with different tattoos around your body and all that good stuff. Now, in regards to the enemies and bosses of the game, it's pretty standard as a Souls game. You have your regular enemies that spawn up in the world consistently even after a rest point, but what's really cool, obviously, especially tying in the Umbral Realm, is that you get enemies that consistently spawn, and they're these little guys that keep on swinging at you. Now, of course, as you go through the game, there will be more enemies that spawn in the Umbral Realm, which has its chances of giving you some really, really good experience. However, it also comes with an Umbral timer. Now, when you're in the Umbral Realm, there's a timer of how much, you know, experience you're going to get, but the more experience multiplier that you have, it gets a little crazy. Now, of course, multipliers 1, 1.2, 1.6, I think it is, and then 2.0 are not so bad. You're going to be fighting enemies as they come along. You're going to be getting more XP in general, or vigor in this case, while you're battling the enemies, and they do spawn more frequently. However, once you reach 3.0, that's when a lot of stuff happens. Well, not really a lot of stuff. It's more so there's one guy named the Death Reaper, or at least coined by Ark here, that really just makes you not want to fight him. He has so much health that it's I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's very hard to actually be able to do damage against him because he's so quick. He teleports into the ground, and it's really, really difficult in general to get away from him. Now, just a small tip from me, as this is just something I kind of found alongside Ark, is that while you're grinding your vigor in the Umbral Realm, there's a really, really good way to make sure that you're not going to die as quickly and you could stay in the Umbral Realm longer. Now, here's what you do. Get to your 3 times multiplier, right? And as you're gaining experience and running away from the Death Reaper, if you see yourself in a spot where you're not going to be able to dodge a lot of stuff while also trying to hit others, make sure you run to your rest point before you get hit. The reason being is that when you run to your rest point and you just stand there, none of the enemies are going to go right next to that rest point or come after you. All they're going to do is stop short, probably I would say about 20 feet away from your character, and just look at you, including the Death Reaper. The Death Reaper will go underground and he won't pop out until you go out of that area. That's really cool because you could go and strike down the enemies that are grouped together, run back to your thing, and then you'll be a-okay. But be careful because again, if you get hit, Death Reaper hurts a lot. But of course, all you gotta do is make sure that you get your vigor later. If you die, your vigor drops and you can go and grab it. It's not that bad. But at the same time, you want to stay in your 3 times multiplier as much as possible. And that, my friends, is how you grind XP a little bit in Lords of the Fallen. Now, of course, those enemies in the Umbral Realm are probably my biggest highlight outside of some of the bosses. Now, the first boss that I got to really fight was named Pieta, or as I like to call her, Pieta Skywalker, because she has a freaking lightsaber, and she's not messing around. I would honestly say that she kind of has the feel of Melania, not the difficulty, but the feel of Melania with a lightsaber. That's really what it boils down to. But she is a really, really cool boss. I really dug the fact that she actually, you know, spoiler alert, after you beat her, she becomes part of your little crew inside the sanctum, and she'll actually help you with upgrades and stuff. So that's really cool. And of course, there were a couple other boss fights, and I didn't mind that, but my favorite boss fight so far was actually the Congregation of Flesh. Now, if you saw my video about the, video games coming out in October, this was one of the bosses I was excited for, and in my opinion, it did not disappoint. I actually love the feel of the boss. He looks so cool. And at this point in the game, you're finally being able to actually do a significant amount of damage. And I kind of ran away a little bit because I was trying to figure out his movements, and Ark had already faced him, and I tried to tell Ark to back off, but he was like, nah, I'm gonna hit him. But I digress. It's one of those things where I had a lot of fun fighting the Congregation of Flesh. He's definitely my favorite boss so far, and I can't wait to continue playing so I can find other bosses that I'll like. But of course, the enemies and bosses are not, the only thing in a game, but it is really fun to see how the bosses actually make it a lot more fun. I do know that Ark has played further than me and has said that the bosses get even tougher, and I'm not surprised at that because, again, it wouldn't be a Souls game without you wanting to bash your head against the wall. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, which probably people are like, why are you saving this for last? And it's only because of the fact that, I thought it was honestly the best part. And that's the scenery and the overall vibe of the game. What's really nice about the scenery, and it is in Unreal Engine 5, is that it is actually pretty gorgeous. I know a lot of people have said that, they don't like the scenery, but to tell you the truth, I think it doesn't look bad at all. In fact, it really added to the atmosphere. I did switch every once in a while from medium settings to high settings to ultra settings, and I gotta tell you, the ultra settings are pretty good. However, if you want to run your PC without it burning to the ground, I definitely just set it to medium, and that's only because I wanted to run through. However, I will say in general that, again, the scenery was just nice. The first area is like really, really nice, and it goes into like, as you go into the Umbral Realm, which the Umbral Realm itself is a whole nother thing. My God, does the Umbral Realm look crazy. But let's talk about the first couple areas. I think that honestly, a lot of the stuff in regards to the environment looks really good and really adds to the whole thing of how Lords of the Fallen is, especially going into the first boss, or really like the bait boss, which don't even get me started. That boss was such a freaking bait. But the area just matches the vibe of what you're going for. It's a very dark and atmospheric game, so you're gonna feel kind of like dread going on the whole time, and that's the best way that I could really explain it. However, as you go forward, when you get to like Pieta, the best way I could describe it is that it's not that it's upbeat, obviously, because this is a very dark game, but it's city dread now, and it's like you're going from dread to dread to dread, but there's certain verities to that dread. I really would like to compare it to the scenery of like Dark Souls 1, but I would say a lot better looking. That's the best way that I could honestly put it. As you go as well, and this was around the last area that I got to before I did this review, you get to the swamp slash forest area, and I think honestly it looks sick. There are a couple things that really kind of irk me about the area, but in general, the overall feel of it and it being a poison area, it matches and it looks sick. It's also a place that I don't want to keep going back to because that place sucks. Now let's get into the actual Umbral area, because Umbral is around literally the same thing every time you go to a certain area. The only differences that you see are a couple changes here or there about where you're at. However, it just looks so sick. The whole area is undead. You're running around. It gives this like bluish, lightish hue. Like I can't explain it. Just take a look at some of the gameplay that I was able to capture in the Umbral area. But yes, I definitely have to say that the environment was actually pretty dope. I dig it. But of course it has its flaws. With the Umbral area, if you're trying to run away from enemies, you're gonna have a hard time, because at the same time when you're trying to find a way to get around the area, you're dealing with your counter. And if your counter gets up to 3, you're gonna have to deal with the Death Reaper while you're trying to find a way to escape the area or get to the next boss, which could be an absolute challenge. Speaking of rest points, the rest point areas are very different as well. They're not a bonfire or anything like that like you would find in Dark Souls or Elden Ring, but it is like this giant skull looking thingy that is kind of weird, but you know, I digress. It is what it is. You could also summon a little rest area in certain areas with these little blue flowers, but remember also, and this is something that I just found out, you can't teleport to these areas. They're just rest stops in between where you're going. So be sure to save the seeds that they give you to actually put in those areas that you're actually gonna need. Now, overall, I would say that Lords of the Fallen is a pretty fun game. I do feel that there's a little bit of clunkiness in regards to your overall experience, like actually moving your character, dodging and stuff. There's a little bit of that clunkiness. However, I will say that it's not bad. I actually really dig the game. I kind of want to go back to the 2014 version, but I heard that it wasn't that good. But I feel as though I have to do it now. You know what I mean? But I will definitely say that I will be playing Lords of the Fallen all the way through on multiplayer, and I will also be doing a single player run when I have a little bit more time. So I definitely say, in my opinion, Lords of the Fallen is getting a solid 8 out of 10. I wouldn't say it's amazing, but it's definitely good, and I think it's worth the purchase. Now, obviously, if you played the game Lords of the Fallen, let me know in the comments down below. Would love to hear y'all's opinions on this, because again, everybody's going to have a varying opinion on the game. I think I'm the only one in direct gaming that's actually playing Lords of the Fallen, because I like Souls games. I love to torture myself, but I digress. I definitely want to hear y'all's opinions on it. Let me know. Now, of course, if you like today's content, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell to be notified of when a new direct gaming video comes out. My name is TystraDaisetsu, and of course, we will see you all in the next video. Please take care and be safe.